Okay. Welcome, everyone. My name is Panwin Yoking. I am a research fellow at the East West Center, and each month, the East West Center Research Program presents Asia Pacific Transition Seminar Series. And through this series, we explore environmental, demographic, and political, as well as economic processes that are shaping the Asia Pacific region in profound ways. And I'm glad you're here in person. And it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Eric Harwood. Dr. Eric Harwood is a professor of Asian Studies at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And he's also an adjunct senior fellow at the East West Center. He specializes in the politics of China's industrial development, and his publications focus on the politics and economic development of China's 5G mobile network, and also mobile social media, as well as electric vehicle industry. And today in his presentation, it will be focusing on TikTok. And so he'll be assessing and also exploring path for TikTok in the US going forward. Just a brief note on the session logistics before he starts to present. This session will be roughly 40 minutes long. After the presentation, we'll move on to a Q&A session. And if you would like to ask a question or share a comment, please use the microphone in front of you. And to activate the microphone, simply press on the button and the red light will come on, and then you can speak. Once you're done speaking, if you could turn it off by pressing the button one more time, and then the red light will disappear. I also encourage everybody to sit around the table so you have mic access. And also the YouTube audience can see you. And in the interest of time, I will end the introduction here and hand the stage over to Dr. Eric Harwood. Thank you.
Thank you, Panwin. And also thanks to the East West Center for inviting me here to speak today. So let me just queue up my PowerPoint slides. Okay, let's see. So that's the PowerPoint slides are on. Oh, I have to. No, is it up there? Sorry. Do I need to press a button here? Oh, now it's connected. Oh, okay, yeah. Yep, there we go. Great, good. Thanks very much. Thank you. Okay. All right, so as Panwin said, my talk runs about 35 to 40 minutes, but if people have questions in the middle, burning question, then I can still take those along the way. Otherwise, I can give the presentation, but yeah, there'll be time for a question and answer at the end of the session in any case. All right, I always start when I talk about TikTok, I ask my audience how many people use TikTok. So just kind of curious in the audience here, how many people use TikTok? Oh, not so many, one or two? Okay, good. All right, well, that's good. Yeah.
Create them, but I do watch them.
Oh, you watch them. Okay, that counts. Yeah, watching counts. Well, so I ask because usually when I talk to like my undergraduate students, when I teach, I get maybe about a third of the students raising their hand. Last month, I was at the Marine Corps base, Hawaii here, giving a TikTok and some other issues talk. And I asked the same question. I said, how many of you, it was about 35 or 40 soldiers in the audience. And I said, how many of you use TikTok? And I thought probably nobody, right? It's the Marines, right? They're not supposed to use TikTok. But there were 3 or 4 people, young men and women who raised their hand. And so I thought, oh, well, that's strange. And some of the other Marines gave them kind of a dirty look, well, you're not supposed to use TikTok. But actually it is for, as long as I say here on the slide, for military use, it's banned for government devices, but for your personal devices, it's still allowed, even for US military. So I was a little bit surprised there. So even it's so attractive that even pretty much anyone in society of usually a younger age group, although as I'll say later, is kind of changing recently, is using TikTok. Okay, so first a little bit of background about TikTok, how it developed in China, and then how it migrated to use in the United States. So TikTok's parent company ByteDance, or in Chinese it's called 字节跳动, is a private Chinese company. So it's not a state-owned company. Many of the largest companies in China are owned by the government. This one's a private company, which was founded in 2012 by a businessman named Zhang Yiming. It's currently valued at about $220 billion. So not, maybe about the 10th of size of Apple, but still a pretty big company. The Chinese version of TikTok, which I'll talk about for a little bit because TikTok started in China, is called Douyin, and I have the Chinese characters there for it. It had about 750 million monthly users in China as of this year. So a little bit more than half of the population in China is using Douyin. Again, basically the same kind of software as TikTok. So how did Douyin develop in China? Well, China already by the middle of the last decade had a fair number of these kind of short video apps. One was known as Kuaishou, for example. But a lot of the other Chinese short video apps were focused on kind of the general public, people in the countryside, people of all different age groups, a lot of them just telling stories or talking about their community and not really having much of a broad appeal. And so ByteDance thought, well, what's a better target audience? And so they decided to focus on young people and also people in major cities, Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, the larger cities in China. In order to widen the appeal to these young people and focus on music, they decided they needed some more technology. So in 2017, then ByteDance bought a company founded in Shanghai, but based in California, known as Musical.ly or musical.ly. And so this also comes into play a little bit later when we start to see the friction between China and the United States over this kind of social media app. Douyin then took off with its focus on these 15-second performances of music and dance, right? That's probably mostly what we know about TikTok in the West is lip-syncing teenagers. But in China, they wanted to jumpstart this kind of performance app by hosting, for example, college hip-hop competitions, so drawing college students into the app. Also, they hired professional performers, professional musicians to add to the app's attractiveness. So they kind of got this buzz going for young people with dance and music. And that was kind of the trademark starting off for Douyin in China. ByteDance then launched its international version of Douyin as TikTok, right? So they changed the name for their campaign to go outside of the country in 2017. So just a couple of years actually after Douyin took off in China, they decided to go outside of China's borders. In 2018 already, you had celebrities in the United States. Some of the late night talk show hosts were showing TikTok videos, which led to a very rapid adoption by American users of all different age groups, still mostly young people. But by 2019, you had 96 million Americans who'd installed the app on their phones or other electronic devices. Again, as in China, many of the earliest TikTok users featured musical performance, lip-syncing teenagers, humor, athletic performances, those kind of things. But as discussed later, by this year, by 2023, business functions on TikTok had become a major part of the platform. So as I'll talk about later, some of those teenagers grew up and became business people. They graduated college and thought of other uses for TikTok for their livelihood. So with close to 100 million users, or by 2020, 100 million American users on TikTok, the Trump administration started to become concerned about this Chinese app, basically owned by ByteDance, Chinese company, and its influence on American citizens. President Trump's executive order targeting TikTok and also WeChat, another Chinese social media app, those were accused of threatening national security, foreign policy, and the U.S. economy generally. So kind of a whole basket of harms for the U.S. That the administration, the Trump administration, hoped would lead to a ban on the app. The Treasury Department, then again in the Trump administration, followed this by ordering TikTok's Beijing-based company, ByteDance, to divest itself of this Musical.ly company that had its foundation in, well, Shanghai, but was based in California, and the US-based social media platform, right, that it purchased. So they were supposed to divest itself of Musical.ly, which would really rip the heart out of TikTok, right? So without that element of the app, it would pretty much fall apart. The next part of the US government that got involved in TikTok, and this organization comes in a little bit later as well, currently in the Biden administration, is CFIUS, or usually it's pronounced that way with the acronym. It's the Committee on Foreign Investment in the US. And so that's the organization, that's the entity that would enforce this Treasury order. CFIUS includes 9 cabinet members and bureau leaders. So for example, the Secretary of the Treasury is the head of CFIUS. The US Trade Representative is a member. And so it's basically the kind of political economic members of the US government that make up this important body that regulates foreign investment in the United States. So according to the challenge, then ByteDance, again, this is during the last administration, their response was to propose creating a new company called TikTok Global. So that was the main concern of the Trump administration, split off TikTok from their connection with the Chinese government and with ByteDance. And so with this new company, it would still be owned majority 80% by ByteDance, but then American companies would also have a role. So Oracle and also Walmart would own 20%. And so that would give US companies a role in running the company. So Oracle kind of makes sense, right? It's a tech company. Walmart, I'm not quite sure how Walmart got into the mix there. Maybe they just have money or distribution, or I'm not quite sure. In any case, the US rejected this proposal, right? The Trump administration actually initially thought it was a good idea, but then they saw, the Chinese are still majority owners, and 80%, that gives them too much ownership. The US government then said, we don't like that. And then the Chinese government also has to approve if a foreign company is going to take part in this Chinese important software. So the TikTok algorithms, if they were going to be used by a foreign company, the Chinese government would also have to approve that. So at both ends, then this offer didn't work. The savior, though, for TikTok was that in the latter part of the very end of the Trump administration in late 2020, American courts decided to block the US government from restricting TikTok. So in the name of the First Amendment rights and protecting free speech, the court said, no, you can't block TikTok. You can't have these kind of sanctions that would force the sale or stop TikTok from being used in the US. So in comes the Biden administration. So Biden then, I think, wanted maybe not exactly reset with China, but at least wanted to back off this kind of pressure that the Trump administration had been putting on these Chinese companies for the last few years. Not just TikTok, but trade sanctions and various other tariffs were economic challenges to China. The Biden administration then delayed an appeal of this judicial decision, right? So said, okay, let's not keep fighting this in the courts. And actually, Biden group seemed to be open to having a third party manage TikTok's US-based data, right? So again, hive off the TikTok part from China. And so this led then, we only found out about this recently, 2 years of confidential talks then between CFIUS, right, this the body that regulates investment in the US, with CFIUS to make sure that the TikTok data would be hived off from any Chinese government collection. So the result then is known as Project Texas. So if any of you had watched the hearings in March between the CEO of TikTok and the U.S. Congress, you would have heard at least the TikTok executive trying to outline what was happening. He didn't really get a lot of words in because of many of the Congress's challenges. But in any case, Project Texas was worked out with CFIUS in a plan in which TikTok would remain owned by ByteDance, so they wouldn't have to divest any of it, but all of TikTok's data would be stored on Oracle servers in Texas, right? So there's the Texas part, and so Oracle is still part of this. Walmart doesn't figure in the deal here. The data would not be allowed to transfer outside of the U.S. And wouldn't be accessible by ByteDance or TikTok employees outside of America, right? So again, you're kind of creating this entity that isn't accessible to the Chinese government, right? That's the thing that the U.S. government at least says they're so worried about, is that the Chinese are going to be stealing information or having some nefarious plans for influencing American TikTok users. So how would this work then? CFIUS then could conduct regular audits of the new data system, and a 2,500 person, so quite a large group of a US-based security unit would report directly to CFIUS, right? So CFIUS has a major role in running this operations, or at least auditing. And TikTok would put money where their mouth is. They would spend $1.5 billion to set up Project Texas, and even $1 billion a year to maintain it. So on paper, it sounded like there was a deal between ByteDance and CFIUS. But in the congressional hearings that I just mentioned a little bit before, in late March of 2023, the TikTok CEO, Shou Chu, testified to Congress, and Congress members weren't happy with Project Texas. They accused him and also TikTok of monitoring data and reporting back to the Chinese government and to the Chinese Communist Party, right? So the Communist Party is always kind of the villain here. I mean, I think a lot of times Congress people don't distinguish between the party and the government, and so it always sounds more frightening if it's the Communist Party that's getting your data instead of the government. In any case, that was the challenge that the American congressman made to the CEO. A congressman from Texas, August Pfluger, pointedly criticized Project Texas, and he told Chu to rename it. And he said, "We don't want your project." He's from Texas, and put it in Texas. Lawmakers from both parties then have given some support. So it's not just the Republicans, right? I mean, the Trump administration started the challenge, but even Democrats have joined in with skepticism and also some criticism of TikTok's presence in U.S. economy and society. Lawmakers from both parties have given some support to a proposed law that would restrict online communications and other perceived threats, known as the kind of big mouthful here of this law, restricting the emergence of security threats and risk information and communications technology, or RESTRICT Act. So I think they must have spent a lot of time trying to patch up a lot of words to end up with restrict. So again, this is kind of a bipartisan kind of support for this challenge to TikTok and to Chinese Chinese social media apps in general. But some Democratic progressives have been more supportive of TikTok, and even come out vocally and supported them. For example, Representative Jamal Bowman, a Democrat, has warned of xenophobic anti-China rhetoric and also anti-China hysteria. So on the left side of the aisle, you have some defense, but even in the next slide, even some conservatives are concerned about this kind of new action. Still from the Democratic left, after the hearings, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez posted a TikTok video, so appropriately on TikTok, saying, if we want to make a decision as significant as banning TikTok, and we believe, or someone believes, that there is really important information that the public deserves to know about, the public deserves to know about why such a decision should be justified. That information should be shared. In other words, if we know that they're stealing information, give us the smoking gun, right? Show us what it is that is really the challenge to American security or to American society. And then on the other end, as I said, in a conservative voice, we had the former Fox News commentator Tucker Carlson, although he was still on there at the time, said that this proposed restrict bill would give enormous and terrifying new powers to the federal government to punish American citizens and regulate how they communicate with one another. So Carlson wasn't, he even said he had some sort of snide comments about Ocasio-Cortez and said, he's suspicious of the Chinese government, but even he said this Restrict Act was going too far, and so he didn't support it. But so you have then from both sides of the aisle general support, right? So this kind of maybe it's always bashing China. I think is always a safe way to get votes from the general population. But so in general here, Congress members from both parties use the hearings to take a hard line on China. Some like Ocasio-Cortez seem open to a compromise, but politicians generally hesitate to take a kind of middle of the road approach. Politicians generally, if they look at the middle of the road, all they find is a dotted yellow line and a dead skunk. So turning to TikTok uses today, since about 2019, as I said a little bit earlier, TikTok is not just kids doing dances and lip syncing, right? So I gave a talk, I think about 3 years ago, I think in this very room, about TikTok, and it was mainly just, that kind of entertainment, right? But so it's kind of moved on since then. Those teenagers, as I said before, have moved on to other kind of activities on TikTok, including informational videos, how-to, tutorial videos. And so today, over 5 million active business accounts from American citizens, or at least people in America, are on TikTok. And the number of American users on TikTok now numbers about 150 million. So about half of the American population, kind of like in China, about half the population are using TikTok. So US businesses make money on TikTok. And so then this, logically then a ban on TikTok would hurt American businesses. American businesses rely on advertising that they've accumulated on TikTok. And I have an example in the next coming slides. Here, this example here. So there's one case of a woman, she was interviewed by the BBC a couple of months ago. And so her TikTok business is giving social media marketing advice. And she has 260,000 followers on TikTok. And before she moved to TikTok, she'd been making about $3,000 a month. Not bad, but not really enough for maybe a permanent kind of career. When she moved to TikTok, she said her earnings rose to about $13,000 a month. So I mean, a pretty steady kind of business there. And so the BBC asked her, well, what if TikTok closes? What would you do? And so her answer was, I'd move to another platform. Because even if there was some way that her viewers could get around any kind of ban, which if maybe in the Q&A, if you want to ask me about that, I can discuss that. They wouldn't move very quickly, right? So she would just have to start with maybe Instagram or Facebook or some other kind of platform to continue her business. So, one of the questions arises then, is this controversy really more about challenges to American established businesses than it is about American security? And so we have a little bit of evidence of that. One particular quote from Facebook, or now Meta chief executive Mark Zuckerberg, who complained in July of 2019 that his company had to compete with TikTok in parts of the world where neither Facebook or TikTok had made inroads. So, TikTok has led, I'm not really talking about other places where TikTok has been popular. In India, it had hundreds of millions of users until a few years ago when it was banned by the Indian government. I was just talking actually to Panwin before the talk, and she mentioned it's very popular in Thailand. So it's not just China and the US. TikTok is really a global phenomenon. And so Facebook and other tech companies are competing with TikTok for American eyeballs and also for viewership around the world. Many other social media companies, including American ones, and this is also another point challenging the ban on TikTok or the sanctions on TikTok. Many other American social media companies also collect user data. In fact, in 2021, Apple even now prompts users to allow tracking, right? So you have to opt in to tracking on your iPhone. If TikTok, then the question again arises, should not have American user data, should other companies also follow suit, right? Should American companies also be gathering all your kind of information? Is that also a threat to privacy? And even some of the Congress people have said, well, if we're going to ban TikTok or regulate their access to their information, then well, why shouldn't we do that for Google and for Meta and Instagram and all the different companies that also collect your data? During these March hearings, some Congress people indicated that the Chinese government could use TikTok to spread disinformation. So not only just gather the information from American users, but also spread propaganda for Chinese policy goals. But then the counter argument there is that there are lots of other venues where they could do the same thing, right? The Russians apparently used Facebook to influence the 2016 election, or at least there's some evidence of that. And so you don't have to use TikTok to have this kind of social media influence on American users. And other platforms also exist that would allow this. Then there's a question of, for these businesses, how can you make money on TikTok, right? So I list here, there's more than just these 5 different methods that I mentioned here, but I'll just very briefly go through them. First, many of the TikTok users sell their products through TikTok shopping, right? So there's a shopping element of TikTok, which started in 2021. And so you have a shopping tab on your profile. And so people can click on that and then buy things. You can also drive sales with TikTok ads, right? So advertise on your TikTok site, drive commerce to your own website or to an e-commerce store, and you can make money that way. You can promote songs. This I thought was kind of interesting, and it fits in with the whole theme of music and entertainment. If you have a large following, you can promote songs, and then you get paid by the artist who created the song, right? So you get some credit for having a large audience and promoting music. You can publish sponsored posts. So if you have 100,000 followers and 100,000 likes, then brands will pay you to promote their products. So again, you can make money that way. And then finally, you can also receive donations through live gifting, right? So you're not allowed to solicit gifts. So you can't, perform a song and then say, okay, everyone, please, chip in, $1 for if you like this kind of performance. But the fans know that they have the option to send in donations, and so they can send coin donations, which then can be changed into real money, into cash. So some of the most popular performers then can get income that way too. Another possible benefit of TikTok, which I learned of by talking with a Chinese student, was that she said that TikTok could help her learn about, so this is, I think, she's using Douyin in China, but she said she could learn about people from remote parts of China from outside of her home base in Shanghai. So she said that he wasn't so interested in the entertainment or the business part, but she wanted to learn about other people in her society. Now, China with 750 million users, right, spans all kinds of age groups and parts of the country. The US also with half the population on TikTok also has that opportunity. So you could have that kind of side effect of people this kind of breaching some class barriers by people using TikTok and learning about various members of society. Okay, and then so actually I'm coming to the end of the talk, so maybe a little bit short of the 40 minutes, but in these last couple of slides, I asked, what would be Americans' reaction if TikTok is banned? So a couple of months ago, Pew Survey Research Company did a survey and found that actually 50% of Americans supported a ban, 22% were opposed, and 28% were unsure. But among young people, so as you might expect, 46% were opposed to a ban, only 29% supported it, and 24% were unsure about what they thought. So this is a point also perhaps why you may be having more support from the Democratic Party for not sanctioning TikTok, is that many young people are voters, right? Young people in general maybe would be more supportive of Democrats. So right, if you ban TikTok, you're essentially upsetting the younger generation of Americans who might react by voting against politicians who support a ban. So we have this kind of age. The Pew also had, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, a kind of a split on political parties. So Republicans were more supportive of a ban than Democrats in general terms. But I think this age group split is maybe the most pronounced of support versus opposition to the ban. And then finally, just to get into the very current events, in the case of Montana, if you followed the news this last week, oh, oops, I'll get my slideshow stop. Let's go back. Okay, there it is. Okay, yeah. So in the case of Montana, last week, the state decided they wanted to ban TikTok. The governor signed a bill. And so this may be a test case for whether it actually can be banned. Because within a couple of days of the governor signing the ban, which is supposed to take effect in January of next year, 5 TikTok creators filed a lawsuit saying that you're acting against our interests. And then TikTok itself, the next day, also sued to overturn the ban, based in part on First Amendment rights or other provisions of the Constitution that prevent a legislature from targeting a particular business without, targeting all the activities in that sector. So we can, ask the question: should TikTok be banned? Is it really a security risk? And so, in the Q&A part, maybe you have some questions or comments about that. But that's pretty much all I have for my presentation. So I'll stop here and then take questions.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Eric. Anybody would like to ask the first question or provide comment for Eric? Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Is that right? Hi, April Herleby. I'm with the National Bureau of Asian Research. I'm doing a lot of work right now actually on data privacy rules in China. And one of the things I'm struck by is all the laws in China are about protecting individuals from businesses having too much access to their data, whereas the laws allow the government. In the US, it seems to be the reverse. The laws are to protect individuals from the government accessing their data, but there's really nothing for the kind of business ecosystem. So it seems like there's this major disconnect. So I was wondering, you did mention broader data privacy concerns and laws. And I was hoping you could just comment a little bit more about that issue, because I do feel like there's just fundamental differences in how they look at things. And to your point about disinformation and propaganda, that could be done on any social media platform. So it begs the question of, do there need to be larger data privacy rules in place? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. I think for the second part of your question, I think if you did start having those laws that had more effect on data privacy and for the broader companies, then you'd have the Facebook lobby and the Google lobby and everything. Don't ban us, right? Ban TikTok, that's fine. Communist Party, they're getting your information, but leave us alone, right? So I think the American business lobby would probably make it more difficult for the federal government, at least, to have that kind of ban, or even state governments, I would think. And then the first part of your question on sort of data privacy generally, I guess kind of the contrast with China, or maybe could you repeat again the first part of the question?
I was just curious because there's a lot of laws in place in the US because citizens seem to be worried about the government accessing their data. But if you read Chinese data privacy laws, they're actually putting in a lot more in place to protect citizens from companies having too much data. And the regulatory crackdowns that have occurred have been about that, but there's pretty wide legal authority for the Chinese government to access that data. So I feel like some of the stuff that the US government is trying to do is trying to deal with that difference that under their data security law, for instance, the Chinese government could access data if servers are in China. And so it's that disconnect in how these laws are being put in place that also creates problems.
Yeah, that's an interesting dichotomy. Certainly in China, the government really does want to have their hands in every kind of pie, make sure that there isn't any sort of publicized challenge to the government, to the parties, one-party rule, and so. But you raised the interesting point that the government also is kind of concerned about companies, right, getting too much information. Many of the private companies like ByteDance, right, it's a private company. Tencent, which owns WeChat, private company. So I think that's part of their suspicion, is that many of the social media companies are privately owned, right? The major communications companies in China, like China Mobile, China Telecom, they're state-owned companies, right? So the government doesn't have to worry about what they're doing. So I think part of the reason that they have those rules to protect citizens from private companies or from those social media companies because they're private. And the government, I think, in China also worries that those private companies maybe get too much information that the government wants to have themselves, right? And so they think, information is power. If the private companies get too much then from private citizens, then that'll give them some sort of leverage perhaps against the government. And so I think that's why they do that. And so, as you say, in the US, it's kind of reverse situation where private companies can take lots of information but maybe the government is more concerned about what's happening in people's accounts. So I think that sort of explains the China part of it. And as I guess I said before, for the American part, I think it's American companies just have that kind of political leverage that would make it more difficult for the government to make it harder for private companies to give up their access to the information. Yeah, to answer your question, very good, thank you.
I wonder if you could expand on this one. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Carlos Juarez here from the East West Center. I wonder if you could expand a little on the Montana case, because I only saw the headlines, and it's a big state in size, but very little population. It's not the same as if California or Texas or New York. But how does it, what is it? How is it operationalized? What is it actually banning? I guess I'm curious to know more details.
Right. So, yeah, I didn't look at all of the details. My understanding, for example, is that there's a $10,000 fine if after it goes into effect in January, unless it's struck down by the courts, but a $10,000 fine for TikTok if their app is well, actually, I'm sorry. Is I think the platforms like the Google Play or the Apple Store, if they still allow people to download TikTok on their app store, then they're going to be fined. So that prevents the app. There aren't, as far as I understand, penalties for people, actually keeping it on their phone and using it. But I think the service providers, the internet companies, are also supposed to make it so that you can't use TikTok, that the app isn't functional. So yeah, as I said, it only came out a few days ago, so I didn't look at all the details. On the question of operationalizing that, I mean, that's a big question, right? What if you come from a neighboring state, right, and you've got TikTok, and then you cross the border and using TikTok, and or you're from Montana using it somewhere else? Can you regulate that? Another way to get around this kind of ban is to use a virtual private network or a VPN, right? And so VPN, some of them you have to pay for, maybe it's $10 or $12 a month or something. So some of them are free, right? There's a way to get around the ban. One of the features, though, or one of the problems with VPNs, actually, even in this BBC interview of the woman that had this $13,000 a month business, the interviewer said, well, can't you just have all the people switch to VPNs? But again, she would lose the audience, right? They would all have to have VPNs, right, in order to access the site, right? So she could broadcast TikTok using a VPN, but she couldn't, the people wouldn't bother getting VPNs and wouldn't have access to it. But I think what I've seen the analysis of the Montana law is that it probably isn't going to be constitutional, that the First Amendment right of free speech is going to strike it down. So I think I'm not a lawyer, and so I don't know all of the ramifications of this kind of challenge. But what the analysis I've seen is that probably it won't stand legal scrutiny.
Anybody else have a question? Jeff?
There a non-Chinese oh, is there a US or European owned equivalent to TikTok, and how popular is it? Would it resolve any of these issues?
Yeah, that's a good question. Facebook used to have something called Vine, but it just never really took off in the US. Facebook, I can't remember, they have a kind of a reintroduced 15-second or sort of short video app, and it's not called Vine anymore. I can't remember the name, sorry, off the top of my head. But I think the problem is that these apps are pretty sticky, right? So once you're using one of them, you don't really want to sort of start on, another one. If you have a business, right, again, like this woman, she said, well, if they ban TikTok, that's the only thing that I can do. So you're right. There's an opportunity then for people to switch to a different kind of social media platform. And then, American companies, I think, would love that. But I think right now we just, unless you ban TikTok, there just isn't that sort of space for a new company to move in and take away the market share, at least at the moment. I mean, you never know with these kind of things, right? We had, when I started using the internet in the 1990s, I think the main search engine at the time, I'm even forgetting it, Alta Vista. Yeah, there was one called Alta Vista. Yeah, I think you're sort of smiling. And then I thought it was pretty good. And then what? I'm sorry?
You just said we're old.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay, good. Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, so I'm sort of aging myself, myself too. But then, Google came along and just, nobody's, anybody maybe younger than my age almost wouldn't even remember Alta Vista, or you had MySpace before Facebook, and so there's that opportunity for newcomers to take over. But TikTok just seems to have that kind of secret sauce that other companies haven't been able to match. And again, it's a kind of sticky kind of thing. You don't, you only have so much space on your phone screen, and people just go to TikTok. Not just for entertainment, but business. News is also, I didn't mention, is also an important function of TikTok, right? People, Hanwin actually was saying that in Thailand, a lot of people get their news from TikTok, which maybe isn't so much of a function in the US. But so all these kind of things, you're just kind of used to that kind of app. The Chinese also are pretty good at adding new functions to their app. So WeChat, which I've also done research about and talked about in various fora, has added a payment function, a bill pay function. So it goes much beyond the original applications of WeChat, which was more communication or chatting, right, as in the name WeChat. So the Chinese keep up these apps, make them more and more attractive, and instead of just having something static, as I think that's a problem for Facebook, right? Facebook has lost a lot of the young audience over the last several years, partly because they haven't introduced a lot of functions that appeal to a younger audience.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Yep.
Thank you so much for the talk and the really comprehensive breakdown of the timeline of what's happening from the side of the US. That's really helpful. I was wondering if the Chinese government or this Chinese Communist Party has kind of publicly commented on these issues. Has there been any public statements by them on this, or have they kind of just left it to ByteDance to handle the situation?
Yeah, I mean, you have, I haven't looked at sort of official government statements, but I mean, you have newspapers like the Global Times, which are, backed by the party, that, they're constantly criticizing any kind of actions against Chinese companies. And so, so I couldn't, off the top of my head, I can't sort of say a specific speech or something from the foreign ministry or other parts of the Chinese government. But yeah, I would think if I, did a really quick search, you could come up with, the Chinese government being very unhappy. But I mean, I think your main point is it's not just ByteDance that's, showing up at Congress and trying to, point out the problems with the ban, but the Chinese government itself has also made comments that it's not fair. And then also, I mean, as I said a little bit before in the talk, and the earlier 2020 iteration of ByteDance selling or creating this new company, the Chinese government, I think, companies, and anything that seems like a challenge to a Chinese entity is going to be on the plate of the Chinese government. Grievances against the United States and all the kind of economic sanctions that they see being put on the Chinese economy.
Do you have any more questions, comments? Did I see a hand at the back? No. I actually have two questions myself, one built on Jeff, the other one built on your question. My question is built on Jeff is, are there other alternative options instead of a ban? Like can a company in the US completely buy TikTok from ByteDance? I think there has been some efforts before, but that has been, I think Microsoft was trying to buy, but I'm not sure why has there not been a company trying to completely buy TikTok from the Chinese owned.
Yeah, you're right. Well, in addition to this kind of Oracle, Walmart, you're right. Microsoft also was part of some of those kind of talks, and Microsoft sort of fell out from the 2020 kind of talks. And then, then this more recently, the Project Texas, right, where you have this kind of hiving off of TikTok was, that seemed to be acceptable to the US government. But the problem with, buying a TikTok is that, first of all, TikTok doesn't really want to sell it, right? It's a pretty lucrative business for ByteDance. So they don't want to give it away. And then there's the loss of the technology. And then the Chinese government doesn't want the technology, to be given to the US. So, for all those kind of reasons, then ByteDance doesn't want to sell it. And the Chinese government doesn't want to see it sold. And so that's why you have this kind of attempt, at least, at a compromise. I mean, I thought, at least on paper, the Project Texas looks pretty reasonable to me. And that's what the CEO in Congress in March was, whenever he tried to mention Project Texas, he was cut off. There's, the usual grandstanding by the congressmen who don't really want to hear about solution. They just want to show their constituents that they're kind of hardline on China. So, yeah, I mean, basically, I think that even if American companies did want to buy it, and you're right, there was interest from Microsoft, Oracle, other companies. ByteDance doesn't really want to sell it, and the Chinese government also doesn't want to see it sold.
Okay, and my other question built on your question, based on your comments, it reminds me of the word reciprocity. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, because so I'm hearing three arguments here. First, the reason why US wants to ban TikTok is because of China. Second, because of privacy security concern, which I don't think is any different from Twitter, Facebook, or Google. Another one, I guess, is like people spending too much time on TikTok, waste of time. And your comments reminds me of reciprocity, because China has banned it, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok from operating on its ground. But the US has been kind of open, allowing TikTok to come in, operate, build business, and so on and so forth. So do you think that, and also another argument that I hear from your presentation is economic nationalism, protecting US national interests, because right now TikTok is basically too popular, more popular than Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, so on and so forth. So that's another argument, is economic nationalism, protectionism. And so my question is, do you think that reciprocity would be another argument as to why the US want to ban TikTok?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. In fact, so I didn't mention reciprocity, but that is one of the items that American government officials or companies mention. They say, well, as you say, Facebook is banned in China, Twitter is banned. Some of the communication tools aren't banned. So, for example, FaceTime, you can use FaceTime in China. So that Apple's FaceTime. I don't know why. Maybe Apple has a kind of deal with them. Or Hotmail, so I'm probably many of you don't remember Hotmail, which, but it's, it's Microsoft. Microsoft has, I think, some good business relations with China. So Hotmail gets through, Gmail doesn't go through, as you say, Google is banned. So the US can say, well, you're banning all of our social media, or most of it. Why shouldn't we ban yours? Well, okay. But then, I guess the argument is, well, do we have to be as bad as you are, right? I mean, and, we have the First Amendment too, right? So we have, and we're supposed to allow free speech, right? The Chinese don't have a First Amendment, right? And so they can just sort of ban whatever they want. I mean, it's a good point. And I think, in sort of terms of what's fair, you could say, well, you ban us, we ban you. But I think, we're trying to, at least hopefully we won't sort of descend that kind of spiral of banning all kinds of information for them. And then China, they could maybe ban whatever is left of access. What the Chinese do allow VPNs, with at least some of them, virtual private networks. So I remember a few years ago, I was talking to a student at Peking University, and I said, what kind of social media do you use mostly? And the student said, I use Facebook. Right. Oh, Facebook, isn't that banned? Oh, no, I use a VPN, and my friends use VPNs. And so, so there are some ways to get around it. And maybe if we ban TikTok, the Chinese government could really crack down on every single VPN, and then just turn it into kind of a North Korea kind of information space. But yeah, but I should say, reciprocity is something that opponents of TikTok have mentioned. And I'm sorry, was another part of your question? Was that
No, that was it.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. No, but that's a very good point.
Are there any other comments or questions? Any last one? Okay, if not, I will train Charles to close this up. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today, and thank you, Eric. Oh, I keep saying Charles. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. I'm sorry about that. Thank you, Eric, for your informative and timely presentation. And this session is recorded, and so it's available on our YouTube channel as well as on EWC website. And I also would like to invite you to attend our next Asia Pacific Transition Series, and that will be on June 21st from 3:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. And the speaker is Pratiti Priyadashini. And the topic will be community-led governance of the commons. And she's from the Foundation of Ecological Security, and it will be virtual. Well, thank you again, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of the day.